Hello everyone, today we're gonna take a look at this Bosch angle grinder. This is a Bosch GWS850C, one of their professional line, and I got this off eBay for 10 euros. It doesn't really work, and today we're gonna try to fix it. I've worked with angle grinders like these for years now. I often fix them, and I must say, for the price, these angle grinders are really hard to beat. Those run you like 60 to 80 euros depending on how strong they are, and they can really take a beating. They have a lot of power, especially for their size, and you can really use them for a long time. And it's also really cheap to repair those. I've had lots of those for repairs, and there are mainly two problems. The first one are the bearings. They have two different bearings here and here. And the second problem is the armature. If the armature gets damaged, if it gets burnt, if the angle grinder gets overheated, you have to replace it. Maybe the brush holder if those get melted too. And the bearings, they can get destroyed if there's too much debris going into the angle grinder. And there's probably a lot of debris going in, but luckily you can get those bearings at repair shops. You can get them for like 3 to 5 euros a piece plus shipping. And on Amazon I found those bearings for like €1.25 a piece. So it's really cheap to get some of those. I have like 20 bearings each one, and when something breaks I can just fix it in 20 minutes and be back at work. So we're gonna take it apart. The problem here, I had it running. The problem is that it's really hard to turn, and I suspect that there's a bearing that is destroyed inside of the angle grinder. So we're gonna take it apart and try to repair it. Then we can take apart the safety guard. On the newer models, those are just held on with a small lever you can press. And on the older ones, you have to take out one screw. Whenever you're working on with machines that have brushes, you want to take off the pressure from the carbon brushes, or you want to take the carbon brushes out entirely. On those angle grinders, it's really simple. They just have one Phillips screw here that you have to take out to access the carbon brushes. Take out the screw and just pull apart the housing. In here you can see the armature, and those are the two carbon brushes. The two carbon brushes are pressed down with those springs, and they can get damaged if you don't take off the pressure. You can either use some needle nose pliers or some small screwdriver to just take off the springs, put them aside, and then lift the carbon brushes carefully. Doing the other side the same way, just take off the spring and push the carbon brushes up a bit. Next we're going to take out 4 screws on the head of the angle grinder to take out the armature. So next off I'm gonna pull out the head, and here you can see the armature. At the back of the armature you can see the small plastic cover. This sits inside the housing of the angle grinder back here, and this stabilizes it. The bearing is inside of here. I'm gonna take this one off to have a better look at the bearing. This one here is looking fine. It's a bit dirty, but it works great. It's looking okay. You can also have a look at the armature. If you see any burnt spots, anything that's charred, then this means that the armature is broken and needs to be replaced or rewired. But in this case, rewiring doesn't make sense, and also I can't see any black or damaged spots. So I'm gonna proceed to take off this gear. Beneath that gear is a small metal plate, and under that we can find the top bearing. For taking off this screw, you will need a size 10 wrench, and you need to grip it somehow. You can use some water pipe pliers. You can also just put it in a vise, but don't push it too hard, or else you can damage the armature. Take your size 10 wrench and we can take it off. You can now unscrew this bolt here. You just put it aside, and then we can take off this small gear here. Now, what we have here is a small metal plate, a bearing, another small plastic ring that the bearing sits inside of, and this plastic part. Here the bearing is pretty loose, so we can just pull it out entirely. I'm just gonna set this aside here. So first of all, we have the small metal plate that is covering the bearing. And the bearing itself with the small plastic ring and this plastic part here. Now when looking at the bearing, we can immediately see that something is wrong. Sometimes these bearings just explode and you have a lot of metal shrapnel and those small bearing balls inside of your machine. And you really want to get everything out to prevent any damages. This side here is looking fine. You can see that this metal cover is flush with those two rings of the bearing. On the other side, it's pressed in, and that's wrong. When spinning it, I also feel that something is wrong, something is just not right here. So this bearing here is just damaged and we can throw it away. Those bearings can come with plastic or metal covers. This one here is plastic, and there's some debate to it. The plastic ones are better from protecting against the dust, and the metal ones are better for high-speed applications. Now for angle grinders, those run at pretty high speeds, but also those angle grinders are getting punished a lot, and they don't often get cleaned, and therefore I like the plastic ones to protect them against all the dust that they have to deal with when they're operating. So luckily I have those bearings in stock. I have a few of them because I often service this type of angle grinder, so I'm just gonna go ahead and grab one of those. So here we have the old bearing. You can see that this part is just pressed in, that's not right, and here the new one. You can throw away the old bearing. Next off we will put together the angle grinder again. First off we will put on this plastic part here, and then this ball bearing. Remember not to put any debris inside or leave those greasy parts laying on dirty environments. I just cleaned my table, so I feel okay putting those parts on here. Sometimes those bearings are really hard to get on or get off if they're broken, and I will show you how to easily put them on and off in a future video. But this one here fits pretty good and it's easy to put on. Next we take the small plastic ring, put it around the bearing and push it inside of this plastic part, It should look like this. Next we take this small metal disc, put it back on, slide it on and put those screw back on. Tighten it and we're good to go. We also have this plastic cap left. Debris often collects inside of there, so go ahead and clean it a bit. You just put it back around the bearing and then put the armature back in. It might take a little bit of fiddling down there, but it fits. Now we will put on the head on the angle grinder housing. Put it on the right way. I like it to have it this way around. You can also put it on backwards if you prefer that, but I like it like this. Then we'll just put in the 4 screws we took out earlier. And tighten them back down. Now we have to put back the springs on the carbon brushes. They will just snap back on there. Don't forget that, or else your angle grinder won't be running. And put the back part of the enclosure back on. It's as simple as that. Put in the screw, tighten it down. And our angle grinder should be good to go. Put the screw back in. And we're good to go.